Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Lily's Little Life Corner. In today's episode, I'm going to be having a conversation with one of my closest friends about dating apps and how dating apps have affected each of us and the effects of going on dating apps for dopamine. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. We do go on tangents a little bit, so I hope it's not too bothersome. But yeah, I hope you enjoy. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Rin. I am an author. I am also, since we're talking about dating apps, someone who's getting over their serial dating phase. I've been on dating apps since like 2019 or 2020. And I've had a wide variety of experiences, most of them bad though.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be here talking about dating apps, one of my favorite topics.
I'm excited for you to be here. So I have also been on dating apps, but I have not dated at all. Like out of all the dating apps that I've been on, I have not gotten a single date out of it. So for me, when I first started out with dating apps, I was kind of like very desperate because I was freshly 18 and I was thinking I need to date someone, right? Because I was freshly out of high school. I hadn't dated anyone in high school either. So I downloaded dating apps to see if I could date someone. But then very soon after, I was kind of like, what even is the point of this?
Yeah, I get that. And I think that's like the two experiences on dating apps is you get way too many matches and way too many dates and it's a time stuff, or you don't get any matches or dates, or you get very few matches and dates and it's still time stuff because you spend all the time swiping and trying to get a return on that swiping and it just never comes through.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is like, it could be where we live. Like, I would not say I'm conventionally attractive because other people have never, I'm hot, but I'm not conventionally attractive.
Yeah.
But I know how to like put a good profile together. And I'm not saying your profiles aren't good, but we live in a place where a lot of white people are really racist.
Yes.
And you're a person of color.
Yeah.
And a lot of my other like POC friends have had very different experiences on dating apps than I have, because I'm definitely not like the Utah beauty standard by any means. I'm not like blonde and tan and I'm very visibly queer, but like. And that also influenced my experience in dating apps, the queer side versus the straight side of dating apps, because I'm bisexual. It's like, until that's where I was going, but I was like, I'm not the Utah ideal, but I'm still like hot, and I've had a lot of luck on dating apps. But then it's also been like, the people on dating apps suck.
Yeah. I remember you telling me a lot about those awful first messages that you
God. They're so bad. How episode are we allowed to get on the podcast? Because we get a lot of explicit openings.
You can get as explicit as you can.
Cool. I just want to make sure you're not like marketing this to children and I didn't know.
No.
Okay. So often I get like a lot of like physical compliments, and I'm doing air quotes around that because it's people like objectifying me, and they're like framing it as a compliment, but I'm like, you're just objectifying me. Like, get a lot of comments about my boobs. I get a couple comments on my ass, which is always interesting because I never put any ass pics on my photos. Like, I don't take ass pics. I'm not sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm not. So yeah, I get those. As a non-binary person, I get a ton of questions about like, are you a boy or a girl? And the way they actually tend to phrase it, and it's always men. Like cishet men will be like, do you have a dick or a pussy? And I hate that question. It is the grossest, rudest way to ask someone. Like, you should not ask someone, period. But if you're going to do it more tactfully and do it like at an appropriate time, not your first message.
Yeah.
Or your first couple of messages.
Yeah, I think that is tied in with like the homophobia. Like, they don't want to date someone who they perceive as, this person will make me gay.
Yes, which is so funny because my favorite thing to tell them is like, if you're attracted to me, you are gay, because I'm non-binary. And I mentioned earlier I'm bisexual, and I tried to date women on dating apps, but because we live in Utah, there's a lot less queer women than there are men. So if I have men on at all, I only ever see men, which means most of my matches are men, which is
same.
But like, my gender more closely aligns with the more masculine side of the spectrum than the feminine side of the spectrum. So like, genuinely they are gay if they're attracted to me. Like, they're not, at the very least, they're not straight if they're attracted to me. Like,
yeah, and I think I've never had to experience that with men, so it's very interesting, like, hearing your perspective, because when men match with me, they're more like, I guess, comfortable flirting with me. If that makes sense. Like, I once got a "Hey Mama" message, and I was like,
no. Yikes. Sorry, I think that's so cringy. You don't tell me that you're into that, but like, oh my god, I hate that. Like when men use like inappropriate pet names, I'm like I call everyone babe, but that's like very casual, and I don't like.
Yeah.
I usually don't open with like, "Hey babe, how's it going?"
Yeah.
But like, "Hey mama." I hate that.
It was very recently, so because like all of my experiences on dating apps so far have been like people not flirting with me at all. Like it'll just be casual conversations. So when I got that, I was like, oh my god, stop it.
That's so valid.
But I deleted my dating app right before he sent that message. So I didn't see it until I re-downloaded the dating app.
At which point the moment is lost.
Yeah.
You're like, you can't go back after you've like accidentally ghosted them.
Yeah. So I was like, dang it.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Yeah, it's so interesting because like the flirting dynamic, because a lot of people are not comfortable flirting, so they will like just do casual conversation, and I'm like, and if they're not flirting with me at all, that's like actually like a red flag for this relationship. Probably won't go super well. Like when you flirt a little bit on the apps, if we're going to go on a date, because like if I'm on the apps, I'm there to like find a romantic relationship, not to just make friends.
Yeah.
And I have a thing about that, about not making friends instead of like romantic connections I can talk about later. Whereas if you're like on the queer dating side and you're trying to date women, all women are so terrified of flirting with each other, it seems like I'm terrified of flirting with women, and I love women.
I think it's also that thing where flirting with women can come off more as friendly rather than flirty.
Yeah, so exactly.
You're kind of like, oh, I don't want to flirt with you because I don't want you to misinterpret. Like, I don't want to be your friend. I want to be your girlfriend.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's also like, I grew up so much hearing about like the predatory lesbian, which is like totally fake. I've never actually met a predatory lesbian. Like someone and a predatory lesbian, to define that, is a lesbian who hits on straight women with the intent of, quote, turning them gay. Yeah. And that doesn't happen. That's not a real thing. But I'm so scared of coming across as predatory, even when I'm on the dating app and I know that they're queer, because they also swiped on me and it says queer all over their profile. And I'm still terrified to flirt with them because I'm just like, I don't know how, but it is a lot different than flirting with men, but like, it's not like that different from flirting with men. And it's just like, I don't know. It's scary. Women are scary.
Yeah, I feel like I've met a lot more lesbians that were afraid of coming off as predatory than predatory lesbians. Like,
exactly.
I don't remember meeting a singular.
Well, it's because of the way that like media portrays lesbians. Yeah, and it's not accurate. It's a homophobic, like a queerphobic, lesbian-phobic portrayal of lesbians.
Yeah, now that you're saying it, I think it's also, not only is it homophobic to portray lesbians like that, I think it's part of the misogyny. Because I've noticed that butch lesbians are the ones that are portrayed as predatory lesbians.
Absolutely, it's never a femme lesbian.
Yeah, which just makes me think, like, what if they're portraying lesbians as they would portray men, and it only comes off as predatory because it's a woman?
That's actually so true. You're so right. Genius, Lily. Genius.
Like, that's the thought that came to mind when you were saying that. Like, what if it's just like they're portraying it how men would act, but people perceive it as not only predatory because it's gay and it's a sin, and oh my god, don't do that.
Yes.
But also, like,
which being gay is not a sin.
Yeah.
For the record.
Yeah, that's true. But also, it's like people are seeing how men try to attract women, but they're seeing it through a feminine kind of portrayal. And so then they're like, oh, that's predatory, but they don't recognize that, well, men do the same thing.
Yeah, and it's a very heterosexual way to look at queer relationships, which is also problematic. We could do a whole other episode on that. I think part of the dismantling like homophobia and transphobia is unlearning your biases and stop seeing them as a twisted version of heterosexuality.
Yeah. And I have, especially on TikTok, when I was very into like takes on TikTok, which I told you about. You were like, hey, you need to stop.
Literally.
I saw
your TikTok sounds awful to me. I'm not gonna lie. Like I would never. I don't want to be on your TikTok. That's scary.
It is very interesting. I do get to learn a lot of different perspectives, and some of the perspectives I'm like, okay, and other perspectives I'm like, oh, you're wrong. But no, so I was on like the gay side of TikTok, right? And I saw a lot of queer people specifically making fun of straight people and their relationships and their interactions. And a lot of gay people were saying like, hey, this isn't how you should view a gay relationship. Like our dynamics are so different. Like there is no masculine, there is no feminine.
Exactly. There is no guy in a lesbian relationship. It's just it's two girls.
Yeah.
Which actually, that's a reductive view of lesbianism. I would like to clarify that lesbians, you can be non-binary and be lesbian, and that does not mean it's two women. It means it's two non-men in a lesbian relationship.
Yeah, and I kept thinking about that after I saw those TikToks, and I was like, wow, that's really true. How a lot of the media portrays it as it's two women or it's two men or it's two, whatever, but one of them has to be a man, one of them has to be a woman, or one of them has to take the role of man, one of them has to take the role of a woman.
Which is like pigeonholing,
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's like some people were saying, well, then what's the point of having a gay relationship if one of you is going to take the role of a woman, one of you is going to take the role of man?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's very interesting.
You have to deconstruct relationship ideals, I think, to be in a queer relationship. That pigeonholes me into the role of the woman most of the time. If I'm on like Tinder and I'm only ever matching with men, like even if they're queer men, often like they feel the pressure to like message first because that's what the man's supposed to do. But I try to message first most of the time unless I'm in a bad spot and shouldn't be on dating apps in the first place. This is a story for later in the episode.
I was just thinking about like my first time being on dating apps.
I would love to hear the story because I've never heard the story before.
So the first ever dating app that I downloaded was Tinder, and it was when I was freshly 18. I had graduated high school. I went from a public school with a ton of people of color. My best friend was a Mexican woman as well. Not woman, girl, because we were in high school.
You were in high school. Young woman.
Yeah. And, all of my friend group was actually full of Mexicans or other Latino people, except for the one token white girl.
Iconic, Lily. I was like the token white girl in high school, just so you know.
But the point is that I went from being in a friend group full of people of color to being in a charter school where I was pretty much one of the only Mexican.
Oh, the friend group was before you went to the charter school.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought this was a friend group at the charter school. I'm like, oh, of course you all banded together. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, that was the public school.
Okay.
And then, I went to the charter school and it was all just white people. And so I befriended white people, and I befriended white people who didn't have a great viewpoint on the world. But anyway, so in 11th grade, I went into this friend group, again, all white people. But I was in the speech and debate class, and I was also in dance class, which I loved. Yeah. Loved dance class. But there was this girl who was in the dance class, and I had a major crush on her.
Oh no, this is going to go so badly, I think.
Yes, it is.
It's heartbreaking.
So, I had this crush on her, but I was also struggling with not only being autistic, an undiagnosed autistic person, but also being really depressed, because also in 11th grade, I had two of the worst teachers that I think I have ever had the misfortune of meeting. Like one of them was hardcore right wing. Like anytime there was a school shooting, and this was the year when there was a ton of school shootings, like
which there's still a ton of school shootings.
Yeah, but this was during the year that it was the first year that there was like school shootings like consecutive. Does that make sense? I don't know if you remember.
I vaguely remember that. I just feel like there's been like consecutive school shootings and we've just stopped covering them.
Yeah, but this was the first year that there was like consecutive school shootings.
Was that 2017?
2017 to 2018.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, because it was consecutive school shootings and they were being reported as consecutive school shootings and consecutive mass shootings as well. I think this was the year, it might have also been the year when the Florida gay bar school or mass shooting happened.
The Pulse, 2018.
Yes. Yeah. So it was around that time as well. And they were being reported.
I hope that was 2018 and didn't just like lie. I'm pretty sure it was 2018.
I think it was 2018. And so that English school teacher, or 11th grade English teacher, anytime there would be a school shooting, he would be like, well, I'm not going to give up my guns. And he would
That's
always
not the point.
dismiss the victims of the school shootings to defend his right to the Second Amendment, basically. And
that's missing the point of the entire Second Amendment, but anyways, keep going.
Yeah, and he was also very racist. And there was a Mexican girl, me, and then a Hispanic boy with autism, and then on the other side of the table there was a black guy. So we were the only people of color in that class.
And I'm sure the teacher was awful to you.
He wasn't directly awful to us specifically, but he was awful towards people of color just like in general. And I shared a science class with the black guy, and I one day went up to him and I was like, please tell me I'm not like absolutely insane.
Yes, you were trying to make sure you're not being gaslit.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you were being gaslit.
Yeah, because
trying to undo the gaslight.
That speech and debate friend group had one specific, I think they go by they, them pronouns now. I think they're non-binary. So I'm going to refer to them. But when I went up to that speech and debate friend group, because that was my closest friend group, and I told them, hey, I think this English teacher is this and this and this, that specific person would be like, fuck you, that's my favorite teacher, this and that, like, he's not racist. And
that's
one
wild.
time after a speech and debate event, I was like, guys, I'm so sick and tired of this English teacher. And they were like, shut the fuck up.
Are you kidding me?
That person's mom was also in the car, and that person's mom started telling me, like, he's not racist.
Not the gaslighting. Literally, maybe this is me as like a relatively unproblematic ally, but I think if a person of color tells you that someone is being racist, you should listen to them.
Yeah.
Like, that's just basic common sense. That's like basic allyship.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry you had that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it was horrible. Like, that person's mom was like, Lily, I really don't understand why you think he's racist. Like, he has helped my daughters so much, because this was like a family full of daughters.
Yeah.
At the time, right? And then
they came out as non-binary, but anyways.
So the mom was saying, like, he's been really nice to my daughters. Like, he has helped them go through so many bad, horrible things. And I just think, I think you need to look at him with a different perspective.
Which is wild. Like, I can't imagine this because I've heard other white people do this to other friends of color. But, like, just because someone's not racist to you doesn't mean they're not racist.
Yeah.
Like, people are selectively racist to, like, people they think they can get away with being racist towards.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they are racist behind the back of people they think they can't get away with being racist towards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, too, because that same English teacher had a conversation about pronouns. And he was saying, like, I really don't understand the point of pronouns, which is like, but you go by like, he, him pronouns. So, like,
literally, he, him are pronouns. He, him, his. Basic pronouns. He's an English teacher. Okay.
Yep. Good. And one of the students, he sat at the very back, but he was always one of the loudest. And he was like, if I see you as a woman, I'm going to refer to you as a woman. I'm not going to use like they, them, or like she, him, or, he was making fun of
pronouns.
And then the girl that I had a crush on, she finally, after months of me telling her, I hate this English class, I hate this English teacher, she finally was like, Lily, I see what you mean.
That's so fair.
Yeah. And so I was like, thank goodness.
Yeah, it's really nice to be validated. And I'm sorry that we don't have a very validating place here in Utah for you.
Yeah.
You deserve better.
But she was still like, I kind of like his opinion sometimes. But no, so she was still like very appreciative. She still respected him as a teacher, especially because of our friend that we had in common.
Was always telling you fuck you because?
Yeah.
Okay, anyways, keep going.
And so at the end of the school year, I developed severe depression, and it wasn't just because of the English teacher, it was also because of the school system in general. Like, and I was very depressed because I used to be a straight A student, and everything in my psyche just changed, because also puberty. But so in 12th grade, to get to the point, in 12th grade, I had to go to a kind of bad kids school, which is where you, like, the credits in normal high school don't really matter, because you have to have less credits to graduate. So I ended up graduating early because I was in a bunch of like advanced placement classes through 9th and 11th grade, 9th through 11th grade. And so I graduated early. And then a year later, I turned 18. And that's when I went on Tinder.
Anyways, lovely lore.
That's when I went on Tinder. And I was, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this. The girl that I had a crush on in the charter school had a boyfriend.
Oh, lame.
Yeah.
I was really hoping.
No, but she was bisexual. Like, she was openly bisexual. And I, like, was absolutely head over heels for her.
As we all are.
Yeah. And her boyfriend's sister was in the history class with me, and one time she came up to me and she was like, Lily, do you have a crush on her? And I was like, I used to. But I don't anymore. That was a total lie. I was like, I don't anymore. I used to, and I was like, at the beginning of the school year, I just think she's really cool. But I totally still had a crush on her. But anyway, so I get on Tinder and I see her.
No way.
The girl that I had a crush on. And I was like, she broke up with her boyfriend. And I considered swiping right on her because...
Did you?
No. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
After I left that charter school, I messaged her. And I was like... Because she had also been open with her eating disorder.
Okay.
And I messaged her and I was like, I think I'm struggling with an eating disorder. Like, can you point me in any direction to like get help or anything? She left me on red. So
that's rough.
Yeah. So I was like, my high school self was like that kind of nostalgic feeling of, I have a crush on her. Should I swipe right? But then I remembered she left me on red when I went to her for help, and I struggled with that eating. And it's really interesting being a person who, like I told you before, I was the family psychologist. I was the family therapist.
The parentification is real.
Yeah. And so I'm very self-aware on a lot of the things that I do. And so I was very self-aware that I had an eating disorder. But whenever I would tell the doctors, they'd be like, well, just eat.
Which is not the right thing to tell someone with an eating disorder.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason why they were like, well, you should just eat. Like, what are you doing? Why aren't you eating? Is because I told them, like, I wasn't diagnosed. Like, they didn't diagnose me with an eating disorder. I diagnosed myself. So I think they were thinking that I was just, like,
making it up for attention or something, which is also not the right thing to say to someone with an eating disorder.
Yeah.
Because that's a mental illness. Like, I mean, a lot of people, like, don't recognize that.
Yeah. And so it just brought, like, me seeing her on that dating app just brought back all of these memories of, like, doctors being like, let's just eat. Like, I don't understand why you have an eating disorder. And I had also gone to the psych ward a few months before I turned 18, and I told them, like, I think I have an eating disorder. And they sent me to a nutritionist, and the nutritionist was like, well, let's see, you need this amount of calories and this and this and this. And I was like, why are you mentioning calories to me?
You need to go to a dietitian, not a nutritionist. Yeah. And, like, a good dietitian.
I will say the psych ward, fucking amazing.
Really? I'm glad you had good experience with the psych ward, because I did not.
I got sent to the one in Tooele. I don't know if you've been there.
I've not been to Tooele. Tooele's far away, and I don't know.
Yeah. Getting there was a horrific experience.
I'm sure.
But being there, I made friends, which unfortunately I lost contact with. That's
you're not supposed to. That's the point. Yeah. You're not supposed to be friends with people in psych ward. I totally have a couple of people from the psych ward on Facebook, so we're like exchange secret Facebooks.
Yeah, we tried to, but I couldn't find them.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, but it was a really amazing place for me to be. But they still, number one, did not diagnose me with autism,
well,
even though I think it was
psych ward's not the place to be diagnosed with autism. I don't think.
Yeah, true. But I feel like,
Because autism diagnoses are weird, but
yeah,
yeah.
I feel like though they could have recommended me to, because they
Probably.
did recommend for me to go to a psychologist or a therapist, sorry,
Yeah.
after the psych ward, and no one along the way, not teachers, not the psychologist or psychiatrists that I met with, not the therapist I met with, no one diagnosed me with autism until I myself found the means, but that's a story for another day.
I mean, yeah, autism doesn't get diagnosed in AFABs. Like, I know this.
Yeah.
Personally.
But what was it? What was my
Anyways,
point?
your point was you got into dating apps and you saw this girl and it like brought back all these bad memories.
Yeah.
But then I don't know what the point after that was. Just your first experience on dating apps?
Yeah, it went really bad because number one, I did not get any matches, and number two, I saw that girl there and I was like, ooh, I have to delete this app.
Yeah, so your
She's
first
gonna find
experience
me.
was almost a non-experience.
Yeah.
That's rough. My first experience, if I can share my traumatic first experience.
Yes.
I was on Mutual, which is a dating app for Mormons, because I was 19 and Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
I was like in the process of deconstructing Mormonism, because Mormonism is really bad for queer people and really bad for women and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first dates I went on, I got sexually assaulted. Like, it was our first date had been like a walk around BYU campus, because I was a student at BYU, which a few weeks prior I'd been sexually assaulted for the first time.
Okay.
So I'd been sexually assaulted beginning of January, and by end of January or mid-January or something, by end of January, beginning of February, I was on dating apps. I met this guy, and we had one like walk, and he like kissed me on BYU campus, and then on the next day I ended up at his house, and he assaulted me. And it was awful, and that got me off Mutual, and every once in a while when I was like really in a bad place and wanted to hate myself and self-destruct, I would get back on Mutual. But basically from that point on, I only really did like Bumble for a couple of years and a little bit of Hinge, and I never went on Tinder because Tinder scared me, as it should. And then a couple years later, I was just on all of them, and except for Mutual. I never went back to Mutual.
Yeah.
Well, I did when I was self-destructed, but in general, I never went back to Mutual. I never got any dates on Mutual because I was, again, visibly queer. I had like a buzz cut at this point. But yeah, my first experience on dating apps was also awful, because I feel like a lot of men feel like, oh, if they swiped on me, then that means they want to have sex with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not the case. I just wanted like a romantic relationship. And that's actually been something really interesting that I'm realizing. I mentioned at the beginning that I'm coming off my serial dating phase, because for the last like 4 or 5 years, I've been either on dating apps or in a relationship pretty much nonstop, with only probably a couple of weeks off in between like a breakup and like rebounding onto dating apps. And I'm realizing that so part of my queerness is that I'm asexual, and I'm like, I genuinely enjoy like makeouts more than I enjoy sex. And I'm like, that's like a wild thing to realize when you're on dating apps and everyone just wants to have sex with you.
Yeah.
And like that's what because right now the dating app culture is very hookup culture, and there's not really a dating app that's not a hookup culture that is a good dating app.
Yeah, that is effective.
And yeah, an effective dating app. It's just really bad all around, I feel like. So I've been sexually assaulted multiple times on dating apps, and I don't think it's because, and this is not like unique to me. Like I know so many people have been on dating apps and then like they get kissed against their will or worse against their will. And part of that is inherent danger of meeting with a stranger. Yeah. Who, under the pretense of romanticism, tries to take it too far. Yeah. And that's like an issue with dating apps, is that there's not really enough education on consent, and that gets like thrown by the wayside. So yeah. Anyways, bad first experience on dating app led to more bad experiences on dating apps. Yeah. Yeah.
I think also the dating apps bring about, because you're meeting strangers. So I think a lot more people feel empowered to do things that they wouldn't do with, say, a friend.
Someone they know that they're going to see again.
Yeah, exactly. And because they can just know, they just know, well, I can just block this person.
And I can ghost them, and I never have to see them again. Absolutely. And if I can add on to that, I know a lot of people, I say a lot of people, some men are going to maybe find this episode and listen to it and be like, well, you should just be more careful. I'm like, no, I am so careful on dating apps. I vibe check them, and I talk to them for at least a little while before I agree to a date. And I have to feel safe. I've turned down dates before because they're offered too soon in the conversation. Yeah. or because I don't feel safe with that person yet. And if I don't feel safe with that person after talking for a little bit, I just like will unmatch them. And I always send a message, almost always. Like, yeah, I'm very polite on dating apps. I'm probably too polite for my own good. But like, I don't know. It's like I'm so careful, and I vibe check, and I don't even like give out my phone number until like the second or third date most of the time. Like, if it was an exceptional first date, they can have my phone number, but like I don't give out my phone number.
Yeah.
And I at this point I like don't know what to do to be better, because it's not my fault.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people who say, well, you should just be more careful, they don't realize how much you can lie on a text messaging.
Oh my god, can I tell you about liars? My second most recent relationship, because I rebounded after this second most recent relationship, he lied to me for 9 months. Nothing he told me was true, I don't think.
Not even his name.
Okay, well, to be fair, I knew his name wasn't what he was going by. Like, he told me straight up, this is a chosen name.
Okay. But you can't even be sure.
Well, I saw his driver's license one time. Okay. So the guy goes by Sam. I'm not against putting his name on the internet, because people should know that there's a guy named Sam out there who's scamming people, because he does owe me $3,000.
Yeah. And he owes a lot more people, a lot more money.
Yeah, no, he had not paid rent for like a year. So he owes a lot of people a lot of money, because he owes me 6 months of rent, his previous housemates 4 months of rent, and rent in the places before that as well. He had been evicted multiple times. He's a mess. But like, his name is Sam, and he told me his legal name is Shane, and then his legal last name is something, but then he was adopted, so I think his like pre-adoption name, so his once legal, now not legal name, started with an M. I don't want to fully dox him on the internet, but maybe I should. But he told me his middle name started with an A, so his initials were SAM for Sam.
Okay.
And that's why he went by Sam. I saw his driver's license once, and his middle name was like not an A name. I don't remember what it was. I remember looking at it, I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah.
So maybe they like
middle name.
maybe a little bit. Yeah, that is wild. So anyways, he lied to me for 9 months, and because we met on a dating app and I didn't really know any of his other friends, I didn't have a way to like, sniff out these lies until I messaged the one friend of his I had met and had contact information for, and she told me everything, which I'm so grateful to her. A little bit like, why didn't you tell me sooner if you knew this? But like,
Which is what I said when you were doing
thought she should have told me sooner.
Yeah, I thought all of his friends should have told him, because you were saying in the live stream, like, all of his friends abandoned him. They stopped being friends with him, but they never told you that they stopped being friends with him.
Yeah.
And I think they should have reached out to you and told you, hey, by the way, just so you know.
Well, here's the thing. They didn't know that we were together.
Oh, okay.
Like, they thought he had moved to, like, fucking Chicago or something, or Ohio or Oklahoma or Arkansas or somewhere. Like, he was from Oklahoma, and we were going to move to Arkansas together. Anyways, we thought he had moved back to, like, Arkansas, where he had supposedly done school. And I do think he did school in Arkansas. Don't think he did a master's. I think he lied about that, because the timeline is all wrong.
And I think he's also not a ghostwriter.
Oh, he's definitely not a ghostwriter. He's just a fucking liar. Yeah. He's awful. I hate him. I'm like so over him, but like I'm not over what he did to me, if that makes sense. Like I'm still processing that trauma, because it's just genuinely wild. Yeah. But like as soon like the way that his friend told me was like, hey, are you guys like still together? Like they just thought we'd broken up. And so basically as soon as she found out we were together, she told me. Okay. So, and she said she had thought about telling me, but she just like didn't know if she should, because she didn't even know if we were still together. Yeah. So anyways, another thing with dating apps, like besides like I never have to see them again, like if you do get in a relationship, they can just like lie about everything, which is so scary to me. I didn't think people did that. Yeah. Like that's a Reddit story. Yeah, and I do remember hearing, it was one of those TikTok accounts that says and tells Reddit stories, and there was one of them on there that was talking about this guy who got engaged to this woman, and I think they met on a dating app, and you know, before the 2 years before they got engaged, it was all good. She was perfect. She was like everything he could ever wish for. I'm trying to think if I know this Reddit story.
As soon as he proposed to her, she started bringing friends over that he had no idea even existed. But she told him, these are my bestest friends in the entire world. And he was like, why haven't I met them before?
That's so weird. I don't know this story.
Yeah, and it got to the point where she kept going out with her friends, but also they kept drinking all of the alcohol in the house. All of the friends and the fiance would just sit in the living room and just drink all of the fancy alcohol that he had bought over the years.
Interesting.
And he would come home and he'd be like, where's all the wine? Where's all the like the whiskey and stuff like that? And she was like, oh, like it was just my friends. They came over, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, you guys drink all of it in one night?
That's not healthy.
Yeah.
That's so bad for your liver.
And it got to the point where she invited a friend over and he had these fancy like golf, I don't know what you call it, but it was a golf set.
Golf clubs?
Yeah, golf clubs. But it came with like the bag and everything. Yeah. And they were a gift from, I think, his uncle or his dad or whatever.
Yeah.
And he saw through the camera, like I think that he had a Ring camera, and he saw his fiance's friend, who he doesn't even know too well.
Yeah, because she has never introduced him to her best friends in the very whole world, which is wild.
Yeah. So his fiance
off the engagement already.
Yeah. They go inside the house and they leave with the golf club set. And he immediately calls her and he's like, return the golf club set or I will file a felony charge against you and your friend.
Yeah.
And so the fiance was like, well, fuck you, and like this and that. And he was like, okay, fine, the engagement's over. I don't want to be with you anymore. And all of the fiance's friends were like, he didn't deserve you, girl. He wasn't the guy for you. And he was like,
that's wild.
What the hell?
Okay, but do you know what's that's wild? Because someone sent me a reel the other day. Is like, there are bad people with affirming therapists who are telling them that they're not the problem, but they are the fucking problem. Like, I wonder about Sam's therapist, like, who he met with irregularly, if he actually had one.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I love my therapist. She's so great and like all that. And then he like stopped meeting with her like the entire time we were like living together.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because he didn't have the privacy because I lost my job a couple months later. And like, but even when I was like in work, he was not meeting with her regularly. But anyways, I'm sure she was like an affirming therapist and not telling him that he was doing bad things if she knew he was lying.
Yeah.
Which I don't even know if he had a therapist, and I never will.
Yeah.
It's like insane. So yeah, there are bad people out there with affirming therapists telling them they're not the problem, and that's the problem.
Yeah. Same with like bad people with affirming friends.
Yes, exactly.
And I think part of it is like when you're in therapy, you kind of the therapist just kind of has to rely on you telling the truth.
Yes.
But sometimes
it's very one-sided.
Yeah, sometimes you go in there and you're like, I don't know what I did wrong. Meanwhile, you know that you did so many things wrong, but you're not telling the therapist that. So the therapist is like, well, maybe you should try this.
Or you don't see as what you did is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you can tell on yourself and your therapist will clock that, or they should.
My therapist calls me out sometimes. I love my therapist. They are genuinely so great. But like the other week, I made like like almost a month ago now, I made a bad dating decision and they were like, Rin, that was dumb of you. And I was like, thanks, Beth. I needed that. I knew that was dumb of me, but like she was really, what they said was, that was dumb, but not as dumb as you could have been.
Which is nice.
Nice. I love my therapists. They're pretty great.
Yeah. But yeah, your therapist should clock like when you tell on yourself, and they should strategically call you out. Because I've known some people who have gone to therapy and they get called out by the therapist and they're like, this therapy sucks. I don't know why you guys like going to therapy.
But that's like a them problem, not a therapist problem.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, your therapist should strategically call you out, because if they see like you're not the kind of person to take accountability, and they like tell you outright, well, you did this and this wrong, you're going to be like, no, I didn't. What are you talking about? Mm-hmm. So they have to be very strategic. But some other therapists, they are on the side of their client because they want money, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that, honestly. Anyways, dating apps suck and people suck, and this is why I'm like off dating apps for a while.
Yeah.
Is to heal from the trauma that dating apps have caused.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you, it's really hard because I'm genuinely addicted to swiping on dating apps.
And that's what the lawsuit says.
Yes, exactly. I was like so glad you sent me this lawsuit, and I assume you're going to link in the description or something.
Yeah, I'll link the articles. I don't know if I have the link to the lawsuit specifically.
Oh yeah, but I meant the articles about
Yeah.
the lawsuits. My therapist has talked to me about this. Like I've talked about this addiction with my therapist, and my therapist is like, you're dopamining, which is just a super fun term for dopamine mining.
Yeah.
Like swiping and getting matches is so fun to me. And first of all, I love meeting people. Like, so it's falsifying a sense of connection every time I get a match, and it's like a sense of dopamine. I'm like, oh, look at this. There's so much potential in this. And even if I only talk to like 10% of my matches, because Tinder, no one ever responds.
Yeah.
Even if I only talk to 10% of my matches, I'm getting like 100 matches, 100 plus matches, and that's still 10 people, and that's still too many people for me to date, even as a polyamorous person.
Yeah.
My polysaturation point is like 3 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just like, because it's a game to me, and it's like, that's not healthy because it should not be gamifying connection with real human beings, because that hurts their feelings.
Yeah. One of the more interesting dating apps that is mentioned in the lawsuit is Hinge, which they promise.
God, I hate Hinge.
They promise it's a dating app that you have to delete, right?
Yes, that's like their whole thing. The dating app designed to be deleted.
Yeah. And at first when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's nice. I'll download it. I'll see what's up. But as I got more into deconstructing capitalism and all this other kind of stuff, I realized that's not really worth it to Hinge. Like if people get on Hinge and
it's also why Hinge is one of the most expensive dating apps, I think.
Yeah, but if it's like a dating app designed to be deleted, how are you making money? You know? And I guess people constantly kind of need to be in a relationship. You know, there's certain people that cannot be without a relationship.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. And I'm not talking about specifically you, but there's people on Reddit stories specifically where I'll just read a Reddit story and I'll be like, why don't you leave? And it's the sunk cost fallacy also playing into it. But also even just people that I've met in high school who cannot be without a relationship. Then they go on to graduate and they still cannot be without a relationship. Yeah. And so I guess at that point it can be profitable, but a lot of companies under this capitalist society that we have want to keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And how do you do that?
Customers.
Yeah. How do you do that if all of your previous customers have to leave the app?
Yeah.
Well, that's where you get into, let's not give them the best matches for them.
Truly. Oh my God. And also Hinge, the people on Hinge are not as attractive because Hinge doesn't show you the most attractive people. Like, and I saw a TikTok on how to hack the algorithm, where if you see a hot person, you dislike them, and then you start seeing more hot people on Hinge. Which is wild.
It just proves that Hinge is showing people that you have no interest in.
And like the most compatible is always wild to me because I can match with I will get like a 42-year-old man, and I'm 24 for reference.
Yeah.
And I will get like a 42-year-old man as my most compatible. And I'm like, are you trying to give me a sugar daddy? Because I don't really want, I do want a sugar daddy, but not in that way. I want someone to just give me money. I don't want to have to give them sexual favors for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember being on Hinge and looking at my most compatible, and I'd be like, really?
Really? You think that? And I want to know how they determine it.
Yeah. And that brings to question, how does an algorithm know who's most compatible with you?
Well, I think it looks at the data on your the way it should work is it looks at the data on your profile, and it looks at the data on the profiles of people you're swiping on, and finding common threads between people who you like and then dislike. You swipe right on versus swipe left on. And it's like, theoretically, over time, the algorithm should become better and give you more people. But dating apps, show you people that you are not compatible with on purpose, so you are a repeat customer. So, yeah. But I think that's what the lawsuit's partly about.
Yeah, it is. It is about that. Yeah. But also another question is, should an algorithm determine who you should date?
It should not determine who you should date. And because here's the thing. I've also tried dating apps like Boo, I think it is. And the algorithm there is it's so much weirder than all the other dating apps. I was only on Boo for a week. But the app didn't have enough time to get to know me, so I was just seeing so many people that are so weird and random. So I understand the algorithms theoretically can help you find people that you are like compatible with. But I think in the end, it's like, I don't know how to say it. You are down, you have to meet the people you think you're interested in meeting. And first of all, like, you can talk about how it's problematic to swipe on people based only on appearance. Because a lot of people don't even read the bios or the other notes on the profile. And that's a huge problem.
I'm not one of those people. I'm reading the bio.
I read the bio because I want to know if they're like a MAGA person.
Yeah, same.
It's so scary.
And some people don't have bios, and I swipe away.
Swipe left on them.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm like,
genuinely,
oh, I don't want you.
if I'm on, like I said, if I'm on a dating app, I'm looking for a romantic relationship, and that's something I want. Or at least I'm looking like a hookup with someone who is like not a terrible person, who I think I could hook up with again and have like a friends with benefits situation. Like, those are like my two motivations, or my two mental states of being on dating apps. But yeah, it's just like, it's so, the algorithm should not determine who you're meeting. Well, the algorithm can determine who you're meeting, but you should determine who you date, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I was thinking about it in preparation for this, and I was thinking about like all the dangers. There's a specific true crime case that I'm thinking of that happened in New Zealand.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know any true crime.
I won't tell you about, because
okay, perfect. I'm not a true crime girly. It scares me so bad. I don't understand how people are true crime girlies.
I'm a true crime girly.
I don't understand you, but that's okay. We can still be friends.
I think I'm into true crime because I'm really into like psychology, and
that's fair. I just think some true crime girlies are scary because they like romanticize serial killer.
Yes, and
people.
Those are called hybristophiliacs, which I learned that word. It sounds so fun to say, but it's not a fun thing.
Yeah,
it's basically where there's two different kinds of hybristophilias. Number one is the person who doesn't value themselves, and so they seek out people who are broken or who are otherwise in an awful situation, such as prison. And they go there, they get the validation. And then the other kind is the I can fix him.
That's so funny. Because like here's the thing. I love making I can fix him jokes. But when it comes down to I know I cannot fix him, and that's not even my job. Like, I cannot be everyone's coping mechanism is my current like therapy mantras. I cannot be everyone's coping mechanism. And like, but I can fix him jokes all the time. Like, sometimes I look at a dating profile, I'm like, I look kind of like I can fix him, and then I swipe left.
Yeah. Which they're fun to make, but when you're actually the kind of person that's thinking I can fix them, and you genuinely mean like I can fix them, that's when you need to go to therapy.
Literally.
But I was on a live stream once, and we got onto the topic of hybristophiliacs. It's a narrator here on YouTube, and I always listen to his podcast whenever I'm writing, and he goes live right before he uploads the video, and he's like going live, reading the stories that he's going to upload in the next day's video, right?
Yes.
And he was reading a story about some woman who fell in love with a criminal, and he was like, why do people like do this? Like, once he was done reading the story, and I commented, it's hybristophiliacs. And then an actual hybristophiliac went into the chat, and she was like, yeah, I'm dating a criminal because this and this and this. And she was basically saying like, yeah, he hits me, but I like it. So like,
that's
I like being hit.
Wild.
And the whole time I kept thinking, but you don't like being hit. You just think you deserve to be hit. Like, that's
I mean, you could argue that she has a kink for it.
Yeah, but the way that she was saying it is that, like, he's abusive, and she knows that he's abusive, but she likes it.
Okay.
And so, just the way that she was saying, like, the behavior of her boyfriend versus, like, her own biases, I just kept thinking, like, you don't like being hit. You just you think you deserve to be hit. You think you deserve to be abused. But I didn't want to say that because the narrator was like, oh, hey, guys, let's not be mean to her. Like, but that's one kind of
one situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I learned a new word today.
Yeah. It's very hard to spell them.
Yeah, I was like, let me see if I can even say it. Hybristophiliac?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's actually not a word. I think the word, you have to be diagnosed with hybristophilia, but you cannot be described as a hybristophiliac.
Interesting. That does make sense.
Hybristophiliac is not a word, but hybristophilia you can be diagnosed with.
That makes sense. Yeah. Speaking of mental illnesses and dating, I want to talk about a major contributing factor and how. So I think it's a cycle, and dating apps contribute to depression. Depression contributes to going back on dating apps, like this hybristophiliac. that you're talking about, even in like more minor, like non-diagnosable terms.
Mm-hmm.
Because my thing is, so I have bipolar 1, and I realize every time I get manic, I want to swipe on dating apps. And I was a little bit manic the other night, and I was like, I want to download a dating app just so I can swipe, and I'm not even going to talk to anyone, but I want to swipe because, again, I'm addicted to the swiping, and it's not fun, and it's not good, and I hate it. It's doom scrolling, but on a dating app.
Yeah.
But like, every time I get manic, I want to download a dating app. And thus it just contributes to this cycle of mania and depression, because either I get a partner and I level out for a little bit and then they turn out to be a bad person, or the relationship doesn't work out, not because they're like, I had this one boyfriend, Chris. I don't know if you ever met Chris.
No, I don't.
Okay, well, Chris was alright. He was like an okay guy. He was generally a pretty nice person, but then he was pretty bad to me in the breakup, and so that like taints the whole relationship.
Yeah.
Because he was like, it was a mess. But like, so he didn't end up being a bad person. He just was
Bad breakupper.
Like, he could have been so much nicer to me in the breakup, because I'm like, even to Sam, who was an absolute dick to me, who lied to me for 9 months and manipulated me for 9 months, I went and I told him, you've lied and manipulated me for 9 months, and that's not okay. I'm breaking up with you. I never want to see you again. That's not even mean.
Yeah.
Like, you can be polite in a breakup, and a lot of people don't realize that. But like, even for people without bipolar, like, you talked about how you were super depressed, so you got on a dating app for the first time, and that made it worse. And that happens to like everyone. Like, I find, especially, it's really tough for men on dating apps, I think, because like, and neither of us is AMAB, assigned male at birth, but there's more men than women on dating apps, so they have way worse ratios of like getting matches than like someone who's AFAB like me, assigned female at birth, for people who may not know the acronym and the acronym, whatever you call it. So even though I get a ton of matches, a lot of men aren't, and that's really like devaluing to them, because it's telling them. And this is the thing, that my most recent relationship, who was a rebound, he was my rebound from Sam. He was like, I just never get any matches, and it makes me feel like shit. And I'm like, he's like, I'm a good person. Why don't people want to know me? I'm like, I think he's attractive, but he's not like conventionally attractive, so I think he doesn't get like a ton of matches. But he's just like the sweetest guy. He has his own issues, but like, I'm not gonna expose him on the internet.
Yeah.
Because he is a good guy, I think. Unlike Sam. Sam gets exposed on the internet. I genuinely, I wonder so much about Sam sometimes. I'm like, how does he even survive in this world when he's like dependent on scamming people?
And he's gotten evicted so many times. I wonder what his credit score is like.
Oh, it's shit. I'm sure it's shit. He was so jealous of mine, because mine's over 800.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm good with my money, let's say that.
Yeah, I'm not. I used to be, but then I got into, and this is why I have a love-hate relationship with credit cards, because as soon as you get a credit card, like, the first thought is, I'm going to be so responsible with this credit card. And then you're thinking, oh, but it's okay, I can pay it off. And so then you buy more, and you buy more, and you buy more. And then you can't pay it off. And then it's like,
I've never had that issue with credit cards. I'm so paranoid about, like, that's how much I spend.
I used to be like that, because my dad is very much so you need to be responsible with your money. But I got carried away, which is the story of a lot of young adults who first get credit cards. They get carried away. But yeah, so mine's kind of poo-poo, but I'm working on it right now.
Good for you. It's good that you're working on it.
Yeah.
On spending money responsibly, that's why I've never spent money on a dating app. Like, I've never done Tinder Premium or Tinder Gold or Tinder whatever the fuck it's called. I've never paid for a rose on... That's wild. I didn't know that. I've never paid for a rose on Hinge. I don't even use the free roses they give me most of the time. I've never paid for Bumble Premium or whatever it's called. Like, I've never spent money on a dating app.
I have on Bumble, and I used it for like a month, and I was getting a whole lot more matches.
Because also, that's another thing they do, is they give you better people if you pay for the app.
Yeah.
And they give you more matches, I think.
Yeah, and I could see all of my likes, and it was such a dopamine hit. And this was after I uninstalled Tinder. I immediately went on to Bumble, because not only was I had,
which is owned by the same company, isn't it now?
Yeah. I think at the time they were going through that lawsuit. It was right before Tinder bought Bumble. But yeah, so it was a good a better app than it is right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Bumble has decreased. Bumble is where I met Sam. What a scammer. What a guy. I hate a guy in the worst sense of the word. Guy derogatory.
yeah. Yeah. But, you know, I was freshly 18. I had never had a relationship. I had never had a sexual relationship. So
Yeah.
I was like, I need to have sex.
Interesting.
Like,
As an asexual, I never wanted to have sex for like the longest time.
Nowadays, I'm more like, ugh,
Gross.
but do I want it? Do I really?
That's fair.
That's why for the longest time, I was like, I need someone. Because, you know, I was going through, you know,
because you also grew up Catholic, right? Like,
Yeah.
which is, I think, also kind of an anti-masturbation religion.
It is.
Like, Mormon is very anti-masturbation. Mormonism is very anti-masturbation. So, like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I had to, when I was doing my communion and confirmation thing, I had to go to the priest, and this is right during puberty, so I had to go to the priest, and I had to tell him, I'm having sinful thoughts.
Oh, no. Also, I hate that religion makes young women and young AFABs, and also young men, go to grown men and tell them about their sexual habits and thoughts, because those are normal.
Yeah.
But do you know what's not normal? Telling adult men about it.
Yeah.
That's perverted, honestly.
Yeah.
Yikes, I'm sorry.
I am so glad that I had a good priest.
Yeah.
And he was always like, well, you know,
that's normal.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. I love that.
He was never, both of the priests actually, because there was two priests that were in charge of like the confessionals.
Yeah.
And
at least in like Catholic, you get like the little booth, right? You don't have to look at them.
I was about to say, we did not get that at the church.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a church in Orem, and so you have to face the priest kind of directly.
I hate that.
And
I mean, I did that being Mormon all the time.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I would have been far more uncomfortable if they had like done, or if I had perceived any vibes that they would have done something.
Yeah.
But they like just sat there and listened. They were like, okay, well, here's your penance. You know, this is what you have to do. This is, you know, whatever.
Interesting.
And then they would just let me go. Like, they wouldn't be like, so tell me more about that. You know, which I have heard a ton of horror stories about, like, young women going to their priest and telling them, like, oh, I had sinful thoughts. I did this and I did that. And the priest would be like, tell me more. Tell me details.
Which is awful. Literally, like, pedophilia.
Yeah.
It also made me think, I was just thinking, I was like, I thought it was interesting that you said this is what you have to do for your penance, because I was never told that, but that's also because I never sinned as a child. Which I came out a little extreme. Yeah. I did not have any, I was asexual, so I never really had sexual thoughts. I never had any sexual sins to confess to my Mormon bishop. Mm-hmm. So I never was assigned like any homework as penance. Yeah. But also in Mormonism, it is supposed to be very much repent on your own and only tell serious sins to your bishop if you need help repenting. But I think that's bullshit, because you don't need some grown man telling you how to repent. That's between you and God. Yeah, that's at the point where I'm at. Actually, at the point where I'm at, I don't think that there is such a thing as sins. Oh, yeah, for sure. And there's no hell either. Yeah. And so it's just, me now, I believe more in like a broader sense of the universe, right? Yeah. And so whenever I do something bad, I can just feel the universe being like, told you. Now you have to deal with the consequences of your own. Which is also very closely aligned with my views. I'm Buddhist now. Like I don't want to say converted to Buddhism, because Buddhism is more a system of beliefs than a religion. Mm-hmm. But karma in Buddhism is not the idea of like you'll get what's coming to you. It's more the idea that your actions ripple outwards, and eventually they might come back to you. Because when ripples hit the edge of a pond, they go back towards the inside, and often it will like cancel out, but there will still be like ripple effects. So it's kind of like a boomerang. Like you throw a boomerang, and if you throw it a certain way, it'll hit you. But if you throw it a different certain way, you can catch it. And that's kind of how I personally view karma. And it's like, if you get hit, it'll be like the universe telling you, you should have thrown it a different way. You should have, done something different. But if you can catch it, the universe is like, well, good job, try throwing it that same way many times, right? And it's like, you're learning lessons through your actions and through this, like, boomerang that you're throwing, and you're learning how to throw the boomerang. And sometimes, you want to try something, maybe I want to throw it a little bit higher, and it'll come back and hit you.
you know, but
Mhm.
the universe is like, try again, right? And maybe
Yeah.
it'll hit you again, but you have to try again. That's kind of
Interesting. Yeah.
how
I like that view.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and that's what karma is to me. That's kind of how I apply karma to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I know that karma has like a very specific definition, but to me, that's kind of how I have viewed it for me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. That does make sense.
Yeah.
I saw this in like a Tumblr or post or tweet once, but it's like, I love it when girls like, if that makes sense, like, am I making any sense after they say the most eloquent thing? And that like, that was literally so eloquent and well explained, and you're like, does that make sense? And it's because we've been gaslit into thinking we never make sense by men who are the worst.
Yes.
And motto of this episode, men are the worst, which is not true. I've also met good people on dating apps. I think of my boyfriend Daniel, who I only broke up with because he moved to Colorado, and that was not work. But that was not going to work we didn't want to do long distance.
Mm-hmm.
It probably would have worked, but we didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
But he was so good to me and always was like so good to me. And maybe it's because he's like the oldest person I've ever dated, so he just had his shit figured out the most. But he was great. So they're not all men, obligatory, not all men, but like all men.
Yeah. The thing is, we don't know which men, so we have to
Exactly.
assume all men.
And it brings to mind the idea that like master manipulators are master manipulators.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's never about the victim.
Yeah.
My friend once said, Rin, you seek out the bare minimum in men. Don't laugh at that. That's mean. Which is not true. And that was on my mind. And then I saw a reel on Instagram that said, why is it always you have bad taste in men and never that should not have happened to you? I'm sorry,
That's
men
what
are
I'm
manipulators.
laughing about. It's like,
Oh, okay.
wow, that's so like wow. That's
Yeah,
so...
no, and then I told him when I do love this friend. He's pretty great. But I was at his house literally in the middle of the night, like it was like midnight, and I texted him like, are you still awake? Not as like a booty call, but as like, I'm having like a breakdown and I don't know what to do and I need somewhere to go and I think you'll still be up.
Mm-hmm.
And I went over to his house. He lives like 5 minutes down the road from me.
Yeah.
I go to his house and I had a breakdown, and in the middle of breakdown, I'm like, hey, you said like these mean things about me and it like really bugs me. And he's like, I'm sorry, that's not the way I meant it.
Mm-hmm.
So, which also goes to show not all men.
Yeah, but it's
I did meet him on a dating app in 2020 though, and he was shit in 2020, and now he's a good person. Which also shows that men can grow. Good for them.
They can learn and they can grow. I mean,
they got put in the work though. He's in so much therapy for that.
Yeah. That's another thing that I kind of resent about a lot of the feminists that you see on TikTok.
Yeah.
Which is they're kind of doing what men would do to women, and they're kind of treating men as these
not the misandry
beings that cannot learn or cannot change, right?
Which is like, not productive.
You just have to hold them to higher standards, and they have to
rise to that standard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I get it. We are coming up on like an hour 15. How long do you want to go?
To wrap this episode up, how do you plan on approaching dating apps differently now that we know about the lawsuits?
I think I'm definitely going to take a break from dating apps. I've been off dating apps for a little bit now, like almost a month, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm just going to take a break and just be like done with them for a while, because genuinely I'm so tired of how I get treated when I'm on dating apps, because I'm not treated like a human most of the time, and that's really discouraging. Even as someone who is like quote unquote successful on dating apps, who gets a lot of message, I'm not treated well. Like there is no reward in being good at dating apps.
Yeah.
And I'd rather be good at, I have like paper on me. I'd rather be good at dating.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's more about human connection and stuff like that. So I'm going to take an extended break from dating apps.
Yeah.
And try and meet more people, and specifically in like a friendly capacity.
Yeah.
Like this is something we talked about, is like I'm making like a little zine to introduce myself to people that I can just hand them as like a business card, but for friendship.
Yeah.
And like a fun way that's not just a business card. And I'm just going to try and be better at socializing and be better at like sussing out bad humans, which again, it's not my fault that I have been victimized.
Yeah, manipulators will manipulate.
Manipulators are going to manipulate no matter what, but I want to be better at like recognizing the manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
If you can recognize it, because again, I was in a vacuum with Sam, and there's no way I could have known that without someone telling me.
Yeah,
Like, the few things that I thought were weird, like, I tried to fact check them and, like, they were real.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. But, like, I was in bad situations. And the thing is, Sam actually treated me really well when he wasn't, like, not paying me rent and was making me buy everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was definitely being financially abused, and I called him out on it, and he was terrible about that, actually, but I was very close to the end of the relationship. But, like, genuinely, like, he treated me so well, like, physically, if that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
that I was like, well, this can't be abuse because I'm not being, like, sexually assaulted or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And that's often the case. It's like,
yeah,
well,
this is not the way abuse looks, so therefore it can't be abuse. But that is the way abuse looks.
Yeah.
And it's really hard when you're in a vacuum.
Yeah. It also reminds me of the sunk cost fallacy and how a lot of people stay in
a relationship just because they spent so much time in it.
Yeah. I don't want to say like semi-abusive because I feel like any abuse is abuse.
Yeah, I would not say semi-abusive either. Just like an abusive relationship.
Yeah. But they keep thinking like, well,
it's not as bad as someone else.
Yeah. And they also think like, I feel good when I'm with this person, except for when they do this and this and this and this.
Mm-hmm.
But they like weigh out the pros and cons and they decide, I've already spent enough time with this person, I should just keep going.
Because maybe it will get better.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, it probably won't.
Yeah.
So just leave the shitty boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much better. I saw a TikTok about this the other day. It was like, it's so much better to be crying over an ex-boyfriend than to be crying over a boyfriend.
Exactly. That's actually going to be the topic of my next episode, and I'm going to go through a bunch of Reddit stories where I'm questioning like, why didn't you leave? But also I know that you didn't leave because the sunk cost fallacy. You've already spent enough time in this relationship, and if you just talk more, if you just get your feelings across more, if you just try and make him see from your perspective, the relationship will get better. But spoiler alert, the relationship might never get better.
Yeah. But yeah, to just sum up my final comments, I'm going to take a long break and then I'm going to try and be better at socializing and making new friends in person. So maybe I never have to go back on dating apps. Mm-hmm. We'll see.
That is it for this episode this week, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening or watching all the way through. Remember, you can listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or you can watch the video version on YouTube. Next week's episode will kind of be a part 2 to this episode, so I hope you guys tune in for that. And thank you once again to my friend Rin for joining me for this episode. Please also remember that I do have a Patreon. It is linked in the show notes and in the description, and you can get exclusive behind the scenes scripts, and bloopers are coming up, and also an exclusive behind the scenes additional 30 minutes of footage that we recorded between me and Rin, where we talk about community and friendship. That is also coming up on the Patreon. So if you want to watch those, be sure to subscribe to the Patreon.